Ever felt like learning a language is just about memorizing verbs and vocab lists? You know, the drills, flashcards, grammar drills, repeat. But what if I told you there's a bigger picture, a framework that turns language learning from a classroom chore into a lifelong adventure? It's called the 5 C's. These are the five main goals of learning a foreign language, as they go way beyond just knowing the word. They are communications, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just learning on your own, understanding the 5 C's will change how you think about the language you're learning or teaching. Let's break them down. So let's look at the big picture, language learning as a lifelong adventure. First, we have communication. What does that mean? That is real, meaningful convos and expressions. Two, cultures. What is that? Understanding perspectives, practices, and products. Third, connections. That is linking language to other subjects and authentic information. Four, comparisons. That is discovering similarities and differences in language and culture. And lastly, we have communities. Using language in real world settings for lifelong enjoyment. So let's look at communication first. The core goal. We have interpersonal communication. That is two-way conversations, texting, and interviews with active negotiation and real-time feedback between two people. We have interpretive communication. That is understanding what you read, what you hear, or what you watch through active strategies that extract meaning and infer intent. And lastly, we have presentation communication. This is speaking or writing to inform and persuade an audience through organized messages tailored for impact. So, um, this is a big one. We have the three modes of communication, like I was saying, but let's start with communication. We have, this is the core goal. It's not just about knowing the rules, it's about using the language in real, meaningful ways. And real communication has three parts or three standards. First is interpersonal communication. This is two-way street, talking and writing with someone else. It goes back and forth. Think conversations, interviews, texting a friend, or even role playing scenario. The key here is negotiation. You learn strategies like asking for clarification, guessing meaning from context, or finding another way to explain a word you don't know. Next is interpretive communication. This is the one way street. It's only coming into you, understanding what you read, what you hear, or what you watch. This is where you're listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, or reading a short story. You're not responding, you're just interpreting. Good readers and listeners have strategies. They use what they already know. They look for cognates, words that sound similar in both languages, like train in English and tren in Spanish. When reading, you might activate your prior knowledge before you start. Look at titles and pictures. During reading, you highlight key information, and after you summarize or answer questions to check your understanding. And finally, we have presentational communication. This is another one-way street, but this time you're the speaker or the writer presenting to an audience. Think giving a speech, writing an essay, or creating a presentation. The goal is to inform or persuade your audience. And like any good presentation, it's a process. You start with pre writing, brainstorming, and outlining. Then you write your first draft. You get feedback, you revise to improve your ideas, and finally, you edit for grammar and spelling. It's about crafting a clear message. Next up, Cultures, because language doesn't exist in a bubble. It's the key to understanding a whole new world of people. This is about learning the perspectives of the people who speak the language. First, we have practices. These are the patterns of behavior, what people do, their customs. This includes things like greetings, holidays, traditions, mealtime etiquette, and family roles. And then we have products. These are what people make, both tangible and intangible. This can be food, like a specific dish. It can be music, art, literature, or even laws and education systems. The key insight here is that a culture's practices and products are always connected to their perspectives, the why behind them, the beliefs, the values, and attitudes that make a culture unique. Number three is connections. This is where your language learning becomes a superpower for learning about, well, everything else. 3.1 Connect to other subjects. First, you can connect to other school subjects. Learning about the weather in your Spanish class isn't just vocabulary, it's a mini geography or science lesson. You can explore math, social studies, or health, and all through the lenses of your new language. Then we have 3.2 Access to new information. This is the exciting part. You gain access to information from the authentic sources. You're no longer limited to translations. Imagine watching a news clip in French to understand French politics directly, or reading a Japanese blog to get travel tips from locals. You unlock a whole new world of information. Number four is comparisons. This is where you become a detective, investigating the differences and similarities between your new language and your own. 4.1 Language comparison. First, language comparisons. You start to notice that the nuts and bolts. You find cognates, those helpful word twins, but you also discover the tricky false cognates. Like the classic example, embarrassed in English sounds a lot like embarazada in Spanish, which actually means pregnant, a very important difference to know. You also compare grammar, word order, and even humor. Why is that joke funny in this language but not in English? It makes you think like a linguist. And 4.2 Culture comparisons. Culture comparisons. You compare daily life, holidays, and even nonverbal communication. How close do people stand to each other when they talk? What are the expectations around gender roles? Comparing your own culture to another isn't about deciding which is better, it's about understanding both on a much deeper level. And finally, we arrive to communities. This is the ultimate goal, taking all those skills out of the classroom and into the real world. We have 5.1 Use language in the community. You use language in your immediate and global community. That can mean going to a cultural festival in your city, writing to a pen pal in another country, or using your language skills when you travel. Then we have the second part, 5.2 Personal enjoyment and lifelong learning. You use the language for personal enjoyment and lifelong learning. This is where the language becomes a part of you. You watch movies without subtitles, you read books for pleasure, or you follow social media accounts in the language. It's no longer a subject you study, it's a tool you use to enjoy your life. Practical integration. How to apply the 5 C's. We first have communication. We can practice conversation, exchanges, we can read authentic articles, we can create video presentations to build fluency and confidence. Cultures. What can we do? Research holiday traditions, Try authentic recipes and explore cultural music and art to deepen culture understanding. Then, what can we do with connections? We can use the language to learn science topics, access international news sources, and connect content across disciplines for richer learning. And then lastly, well, not lastly, but almost lastly, we have comparisons. Comparisons, what can we do? We can create comparison charts, analyze language structures, and decide cultural differences to highlight contrast and similarities. And now lastly, communities. We can join language meetups, attend cultural events, and watch foreign films for fun to engage with real communities and contexts. So there you have it, the 5 C's. Communication to connect with others, cultures to understand the world, connections to learn new things, comparisons to gain a deeper insight, and communities to bring it all to life. The next time you sit down to study, don't just think about the words on the page. Think about which C you're working on. Are you preparing for a conversation? Are you unlocking a cultural secret? You're just not learning a language, you're becoming a more connected, more aware citizen. So here we have one, communicate authentically. We connect with other people across cultures to meaningful dialogue. Two, we understand cultures. That means we deepen empathy and broaden perspectives. We make connections, enhance all learning through inter- interdisciplinary links. We also think critically. We sharpen analysis through comparison. And lastly, engage communities. We create lasting impact and personal fulfillment. So, okay, teachers, pop quiz. You've heard of the 5 C's: communications, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. You know they're all the goals of learning a language, but do you really know them? Can you apply them? Can you spot them in the wild? Today, we're not just reviewing, we're going deep. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You're going to answer out loud. Say it. Don't be shy. And then I'm going to give you the analyzed response, the breakdown of the why the answer is what it is. Grab a notebook or just get ready to think on your feet. Let's see how well you know the 5 C's. Let's go. Ready for a challenge? Can you really spot the 5 C's in action? Remember, answer out loud. Say it with me. Let's go. The basics. Let's start with the fundamentals of the 5 C's. Question 1. What is the fundamental difference between an interpretive and presentational modes of communication? Is it direction, receiving and giving? Is it audience, or is it speed? Time's up. If you said something about who's doing the talking, you're on the right track. Here's the analyzed response. The answer is direction. The fundamental difference lies in the direction and the role of the student. In the interpretive mode, communication is one way, and you're the receiver. You are reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a movie. The information is coming to you. In the presentational mode, communication is also one way, but now you are the sender. You are giving a speech, writing an essay, or creating a video. The information is going from you to an audience. Both are one way, but one is input and one is output. Did you get it? All right, question number 2. This one's a bit trickier. How does the concept of perspectives act as the bridge between a culture's products and practices? Here's the breakdown. Perspectives are the why. Think of it like this. Practices are what people do, the how. Products are what people make, the what. Perspectives are the beliefs and values, the why. For example, take a culture that values community and family. That's the perspective. The value explains the practice of having huge family dinners every Sunday. And that value also explains the product, the need for a massive, specialized cooking pot to feed everyone. The perspective is always the glue. Without it, the practice is just a random action and the product is just a thing. The perspective gives them meaning. Okay, we've defined terms. Now let's apply them. Let's play spot the sea. You watch Spanish news about climate change. Which sea is this? Did you answer out loud? When you watch Spanish news about climate change, you're using the communication standard in interpretive mode. You're receiving and understanding information in the target language, Spanish, listening, reading, and making meaning from authentic content. Question 4 and 5. 4. You collab on a Mexico science project. Which C is this? Our options are connections, comparisons, or communities. Question 5. You compare greetings in Spanish and your culture. Which C is this? Is it connections, comparisons, or communities? Take a few seconds to answer. The answer is connections and comparisons. Connections, using language to link across disciplines and cultures, like collab on a Mexico science project. Now, the other answer is comparisons, noticing similarities and differences in language and culture, like comparing greetings in Spanish with your own. Now, you're the teacher. Now, you're moving into a problem solving mode. I want you to put on your teacher hats. A student is struggling with a presentation or writing task. You look at their draft and it's a mess, totally disorganized and lacking ideas. Looking at the writing is a process steps. Which specific stage would you like to suggest they return to? What do you tell them? Brainstorm. If you said go back to brainstorm, you nailed it. The student needs to go back to the pre-writing stages. The text lists pre-writing as their foundation, brainstorming, research, and outlining. If the draft is disorganized and has no ideas, it's a classic symptom of skipping the blueprint. You can't build a house without the blueprint. You can't write a good paper without pre-writing. Send them back to the drawing board. Next scenario. You want your students to engage in standard 5.1 community, but your school is in a very isolated town with no native speakers. What digital solution could you use to help them use the language in real world contexts? Our options are social media, pen pal, language exchange apps, and virtual exchanges. Just because you're isolated doesn't mean you can't connect. The answer is all of them. Pen pal programs. Use secure platforms to connect with the classroom in another country. Virtual exchanges. Set up video calls. Social media interaction. Have students follow and leave respectful comments on the Instagram of a museum in a band in Mexico City. Language exchange apps. Text with real people learning English who want to learn your students' language in return. The world is smaller than ever. Let's use the tech. Why is interpersonal mode 1.1 often considered the most difficult to master compared to interpretive or presentational? The interpersonal mode is the hardest because it requires real time, spontaneous negotiation of meaning. With interpretive, you can reread pages or rewind a video. With presentational, you can plan, write a draft, and revise. But with interpersonal, it's a live conversation. You have to listen, comprehend, think of a response, and monitor the other person's reaction, all while the clock is ticking. You have to use those strategies we talked about, like asking for clarification, talking around words you don't know in that moment. It's the difference between a studio recorded song and a live jazz improvisation. Can a student truly understand a foreign culture without first comparing it to their own? Why or why not? Take a few seconds to think. Again, can a student truly understand foreign culture without first comparing it to their own? Why or why not? The answer? Yes, because culture is only about learning facts like foods and holidays. I mean, the options. Another option, no, because without comparison, a student sees practices as weird instead of understanding the meaning behind them. Third option, yes, as long as the student memorizes a list of cultural practice products and practices. Well, let me tell you, understanding is built on foundation of the unknown. When you compare your culture to another, you move from simply observing a fact, oh, they eat with chopsticks, to analyzing its significance. We use forks, which comes from a different history. What does that say about values versus theirs? This act of comparison 4.2 forces you to look in the mirror. It makes you question your own biases. Without that comparison, your understanding of the foreign culture stays superficial. You might just see their practices as weird instead of understanding them as different. Comparison is the key to unlocking true cultural empathy. Let's look at a school event called the Global Festival that it hits all five C's. So let's look at all the activities they have. First, for communication 1.1 interpersonal, we have a food market. Students must use Spanish to haggle and purchase food from booths run by other students. For cultures 2.2 products, we have a artifact museum. Students display and explain traditional products they've made like masks and textiles. For connections, we have 3.1, a global math challenge booth. They solve math problems like converting currency based on real data from another country. For comparisons, we have 4.2, Greetings around the world video booth. Students film a greeting from their culture and one from the target culture, explaining the difference. For communities 5.1, an action wall. Students sign up for real post festival activities like finding a pen pal or visiting a cultural restaurant. This is how you throw a party and learn a language at the same time. Wow, we went from simple definitions to designing entire festivals. That is the power of the 5 C's. It's a framework that turns vocab lists into real world skills. Whether you were getting very whether you were getting every question right or just figuring it out as we went along, the goal is the same: to use language to connect, to understand, and to explore. Let's move on. If you ever looked at the TEKS guide for a language class, you've probably seen the 5 C's. It looks complicated, but honestly, it's just the blueprint for how we actually use language in real world. Today, we're breaking down the TEKS structure for language other than English. We're going to look at every level from novice to advanced and show you how communications, culture, connections, comparisons, and communities stack up to make you fluent. Let's dive in. First up is communication. This is the engine of language learning. The TEKS breaks this into three distinct modes, and you have to master all three to move up a level. Strand A, interpersonal. This is the back and forth. Think of it as a tennis match. You talk and you write to socialize, get info, and express feelings. At level 1 Spanish, you're saying, "Hi, how are you? I like pizza." By level 4, you're negotiating a solution to a problem or debating a current event. Strand B, interpretive communication. This is listening and reading. It means understanding spoken or written language. At first, you're just getting the gist from a menu or short video. By higher levels, you're analyzing authentic literature or news broadcasts without a dictionary. Then lastly, we have strand C, presentation communication. This is one-way communication. You're presenting information to others. In level 1 Spanish, it's a slideshow about your family. In AP or level 4 Spanish, it's a formal speech or a persuasive essay where you cite sources. The goal here is simple: moving from memorized phrases to spontaneous, creative communication. Let's talk about the cultures. You can't separate language from culture. The TEKS divides this into two parts, but they always connect back to perspectives, the why behind the culture. Let's look at strand A, practices and perspectives. This is about behaviors. For example, in many Spanish speaking cultures, the practice is greeting with a kiss on the cheek. The perspective, it's about valuing personal connection over physical distance. Let's look at strand B under cultures. Products and perspectives. This is about the things a culture makes, like art, music, food, laws. A product might be a piñata. The perspective, it's not just a party game, it represents the triumph of good over evil. When you understand the perspective, you stop just learning about the cultures and start understanding the people. Here's where the magic happens: connections about making the language useful for other things in your life. Strand A, getting info. You use resources, yes, including technology to get information. In level 1 class, that might be using Google Earth to find famous landmarks. In level 3, you're using level 3 Spanish, you could be using authentic target language news sites to research climate changes. Let's look at strand B, learning other subjects. This is the cross curricular part. You aren't just learning verbs, you're learning history, math, science through Spanish. Imagine learning about the Silk Road in world history class, but doing it entirely in Mandarin. That's the connection. It reinforces both subject at once. Now let's look at comparisons. Comparisons are where you become a linguistic. This section is about critical thinking. Strand A. Compare languages. You look how the language works. Why does Spanish put adjectives after nouns, but English puts them before? Casa Blanca versus White House. You also look at the languages influence each other, like how French gave English half of its vocabulary in the Norman conquest. Strand B. Compare cultures. You contrast your own culture practices with the target culture. Why do schools in Japan clean their classrooms, but in the US we have janitors? It's not just a difference in chore list, it's different in values regarding community responsibility. This section turns you from a parrot repeating words into a thinker who understands why language works the way it does. Finally, communities. This is the payoff. The teaks ask, why are you what are you using the outside of the classroom? Let's look at strand A. In and out of school. This is the immediate application. It could be going to a local restaurant and ordering in the language or helping a new student at your school who speaks that language. It's taking the classroom into the real world. Strand B. Lifelong learning. This is the long game. Are you using the language for personal growth or your career? Maybe you want to be a doctor and use Spanish to communicate with patients. Or maybe you just love K pop and you use Korean to understand interviews without subtitles. The goal here is to become a lifelong learner who uses the language not just for a grade, but for life. So, why does this structure matter? Because language isn't just about vocabulary lists and verb conjugations, it's a tool. The TEAKS structure ensures that whether you are in level 1 or level 5, you're growing in every direction, communicating authentically, understanding cultures, connecting to other subjects, comparing to your native tongue, and finally, joining communities beyond the school walls. If you focus on these 5 areas, you aren't just learning a language, you're acquiring a skill that will change your life. Let's play a game. It's 5 minutes, 5 questions, one winner. You. Welcome to Teaks Fast 5, the game show where we test your knowledge of the LOTE Teaks structure. I'm your host, Yesenia Nieto. Here's how it works. I ask a question, you say your answer out loud. I reveal the correct response. Let's go. Okay, here we go. For 100 points. Question 1. According to the TEAKS, what is the expected proficiency level for a student at the end of level 1? Options: intermediate mid, B, novice high, C, advanced low. 3 seconds, lock it in. Okay, ready for the answer? B, novice high. Novice high means students can handle simple, predictable conversations. If you got it right, give yourself 100 points. Next question for 200 points. Question 2. A teacher asks students to identify the influence of Spanish on the English spoken in Texas. Which TEAKS categories does this fall under? Our options are Comparisons, compare languages. B, comparisons, compare cultures. And C, comparisons, understand how language influence each other. Take 3 seconds. The answer, comparisons. Letter C, the last one. This isn't just grammar or daily life. It's about how languages borrow each other from each other and evolve. Words like rodeo, taco, and canyon. That's language influence. Add 200 points if you got it. For 300 points, students will state their favorite color, but the TEKS says state and support an opinion or preference. What must you change? A, nothing, it's close enough. B, add another part in the discussion. C, add a because students must explain a why. Take 3 seconds. The answer is C. Add a because students must explain a why. Because the text says state and support. In Texas, that and is state law. You have to do both. A simple fix. My favorite color is blue because it's the color of the sky. There you go. Easy fix. You add because. Add 300 points if you got this. For 400 points, why do the TEKs use the same 5 C's for every level instead of creating new categories as students get older? Option A, it's easier for the state to print the same document. Option B, language learning is a spiral. Goals stay the same, depth increases. And option C, teachers don't like new frameworks. Take 3 seconds. Answer B, languages learning is a spiral. You never finish communication. In level 1, you communicate with memorized phrases, but in level 4, you communicate with arguments and evidence. Same goal, deeper complexity. That's the spiral. Add 400 points if you got this. 500 points. Final question. A Spanish class plays the Mexican birthday song, Las Mañanitas. Students identify the song as cultural product. Then the teacher asks, in the US, we sing Happy Birthday. This song talks about waking up in flowers. What does this tell us about what's important in this culture? Which two TEKS standards are being addressed? Option 1, communication A and connections B. Option 2, cultures A and cultures B. Last option, cultures B and comparisons B. Take 5 seconds. This is for the win. The answer, cultures B and comparisons B. Here's why. Cultures B connects the product, the song, to perspectives, cultural values. Comparisons B compares the target culture to students' own culture. That's how you layer standards. Add 500 points if you nailed it. If you scored all 5, you officially conquered the TEKS 5 C's structure in under 5 minutes. The 5 C's, communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities, aren't just boxes to check, they're the blueprint for how language moves from the classroom into the real world.